Hey, everybody, this is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today, we're talking with Ken Attard, founder of Mindset Malta. He's a mindset consultant specifically focused on helping frustrated entrepreneurs to adapt and pivot using his proprietary ARC method so we can create the results that we really want. I'm a big believer in the power of mindset, so I'm super excited about this. And he's going to share with us some real interesting stuff. So, with that, welcome, Ken, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Brett. I really appreciate it. And I am quite excited about being here and being able to share this, what I believe is extremely valuable information.
That's awesome. I always look for people that have sort of a unique take on things, a unique perspective, a unique background, because I find that's really fascinating. A lot of people will talk about, basic marketing tactics or this or that, but I like to sort of go to all the corners of everything and make sure that we cover everything for entrepreneurs so they can get the most out of what they're trying to do. So I know you're going to be sharing with us some amazing tips about our mindset as entrepreneurs, but I have to start by asking you about your background. So what's been your career path and what led you specifically to focus on mindset for entrepreneurs?
Wow, career path. Okay, we're going back here. So essentially, I actually started out as a banker. I worked I actually worked in a clothes factory just before I started working got into banking, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so for about 6 months, that was sort of like during a student worker phase, if you'd like to call it. I was still studying, finishing off my studies, and then started working at the bank. Worked at the bank for about 6 years, almost 7 years actually, and then moved into sales. I worked with one of the leading companies here in Malta in sales for about 3 years, learned a ton there. And then an opportunity came with a small business I was going to continue in sales, but I was going to be something completely different. And I was going to have, I wanted to move closer to ownership, if you'd like to say. And it was a small business,
Sure.
so I was involved much more. Learned a lot there as well. Spent probably a good how many years did I spend there? I probably about 6 years, I think, doing various
Okay.
things. And during that time as well, got involved in retail with the same company. Was helping out, and then I decided in 2000 I've actually ventured out completely on my own in retail.
Okay.
So I opened a souvenir shop at the time here in Malta, which is, tourism is a big thing here. So I opened a souvenir shop,
Absolutely.
which is something I already knew because that's what I was also part of that with where I was previously, one of the retail shops I was helping to run. So I sort of knew that industry, and I opened my first retail shop. And then in the span of about 3 years, I opened another two shops, another souvenir shop, and then a gift shop as well. Which, looking back now, I moved a little too fast. That's how we learn. Moved a little too fast, so I sort of like. Anyways, between 2000 and 2006, I opened these three shops and closed them
Okay.
over 6 years, which was great learning. Yet in between there as well, and this is very relevant to what we're talking about today, I got involved in network marketing,
Okay.
and as many, that's where I started to dabble in personal development because part and parcel of network marketing, multi-level marketing for many companies is listening to speakers, starting to get involved in personal development, and I was sort of like blown away with some of the stuff that I started to learn. And because of the nature of that, I was getting in front of people very often. Sometimes I'd have 40 to 60 people in my office on a weekly basis. And then we'd have the bigger events and, speaking in front of 400 people. The thing that was a catalyst for me was the stuff that I was learning when it came to personal development. I was like, how come they don't teach us this stuff in school? And it was an inspiration for me to keep going and keep on learning, and I haven't looked back since then, as in I mean, the network marketing and that's now, in the background, yet not even in the background. It's just that's another lifetime. Yet I kept on with
Sure.
the personal development and just kept on learning. I just kept on reading, kept on learning more stuff. Got my NLP, neuro linguistic programming practitioner, master practitioner as well. Um, in between there as well, I have a promotional merchandise business. So, which was believe it or not, was my main source of income up until COVID.
Okay.
And then it was in COVID, during COVID, where I decided, because I continued to do some coaching and stuff like that, but it was really sort of like in the background. And then I just made a
Hmm.
decision. You know what? I want to make this. This is something that I really want to do. I love doing it, and I want to make it my full time. And I just continued to learn. And again, we had to learn a lot of new things when it came to technology and stuff like that, and learning about certain marketing things and all kinds of stuff. And I've just continued on from there, and that's where the journey has sort of like brought me to today. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to work with entrepreneurs as well, is the fact that I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years plus myself. So I
Yeah.
do understand some of the ins
Hmm.
and outs of when it comes to entrepreneurship as well. And that's what sort of like brought
And
us to where
it's
we are today.
that makes perfect sense. It's an interesting journey, and I'll say it is fascinating because when you enter the world of entrepreneurship, you realize how holistic it is in terms of who you are as a person. People a lot of times focus on it from the perspective of sales and marketing and the functions of a business. But the reality of it is, and by the way, this is why I started the podcast, because with the optYOUmize podcast, my whole idea is that your business can only grow to the degree that you do. And the idea is most people end up sacrificing either their personal life for their business or the other way around. And it's very hard to sort of marry the two in a way where you can feel fulfilled and successful. And so, you know, understanding that it's sort of, you start peeling back layers of the onion and you realize there's a lot to this, and a lot of it is mental. So I know there's some confusion around the idea of mindset. Can you give us an idea of exactly what that means and why it's important,
Yeah.
particularly in
Yeah,
entrepreneurship?
absolutely. For me, like when it comes to mindset for me, and I like to keep things, one of the things that I like to do is really keep things as simple as possible. I think that the tendency is to complicate things a lot more than it needs to be complicated. So the way I look at mindset
Hmm.
essentially for me is this, is it is predominantly what you are thinking about. This is what that is essential to be aware of. Now, some of that thinking, again, is going on unconsciously simply because we have learned to behave in a certain way over the years, whether that happened when we were younger, got installed with certain programs when we were younger, continue to be installed as we get older, depending on how much awareness you have, because this is really important. So it's predominantly what you're thinking about it, because I mean, studies have shown that 90% of the thoughts that you have today, you will have again tomorrow. And if
That's
those
interesting.
thoughts are unresourceful, if you're thinking about, so let's use money, because people can understand that right away. If predominantly you
Hmm.
are constantly thinking about the fact that you do not have enough money, if that is top of mind, whether that's subtly with, and because it's in our face every day, so oh, I need to pay that bill. I'm not sure if am I going to make it to the end of the month? But all this stuff, if that's predominantly your thinking, you are essentially creating more of that. You are creating more of that as you are thinking that, because if you are thinking lack, you continue to create lack. And this is why mindset is so important, because when you actually begin to understand how it works, now you can begin to take a bit of control. Now, can you control
That makes
everything?
sense.
No. Yet you can actually begin to understand and say, okay, let me start to think, understand the process, what's happening, because your thinking is having an effect on the emotions that are happening with you. So when you're thinking a thought, it's either creating sort of like a good feeling emotion, let's make it really simple, or a
Hmm.
bad feeling emotion. Now, if
Hmm.
you're totally unaware of that, you might be thinking that things are just happening to you, yet in actual fact you are creating it. So this is it, just to make it really simple. What are your predominant thoughts throughout the day? Are most of those
Sure.
thoughts making you feel good, or are most of those thoughts making you feel bad?
That makes sense. So, what about people? So, for the skeptics out there,
Yeah.
right? Some people might say, "Oh, this mindset stuff, it's just touchy feely." Isn't success in business really about creating a strategy, like doing the work and then executing on that? So, can you tell us how mindset has an effect on our outcomes and experiences in both business and life?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really cool. And that isn't what you are stating there is actually a fact. And when I say a fact is that I believe that the majority of entrepreneurs have actually been fooled, have been fooled to believe that it is all about, all that preparation of planning. And I'm not saying that it's not essential, but all the tasks that
Sure.
need to be done. And this is where we've been fooled and programmed. So think about it. You know, most of the entrepreneurial events that I've attended or been a part of, going way back, and I was still learning. So you don't realize yet. We constantly hear these words about how an entrepreneur needs to sacrifice, how an entrepreneur needs to suffer. How an entrepreneur expect the stress. And all of these words and struggle.
Hmm.
You know, and you hear these over and over. And you go to one event and you hear it. You go to another event and you hear it. And you go to another event and you hear it. It becomes a belief. So what happens to most entrepreneurs is that now they are associating, they have the belief that all of these things like struggle, sacrifice, stress are associated with being successful. And if they're not
Interesting.
stressed out, if they're not struggling, if they're not sacrificing and all of these things, then they're not being successful because it becomes
Yeah.
a belief. So this is where they've been fooled. And they've been fooled to believe that it's all of these external tasks and this, having to be doing something all the time and taking action. That's another thing, the taking action part. Fantastic. Don't get me wrong. You got to take action. I get it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
get
Yeah.
it. Yet there's a significant difference between taking action and taking inspired action. Action is just about going and doing things. There's a lot of people really busy doing nothing. They're busy because they
Yeah.
believe that by being busy, they're moving towards success. What they're not realizing is,
Sure.
and sheer determination is phenomenal, is great. And you will be successful through sheer determination. It's just that it'll be a longer road because it's like you're constantly pushing against something. So this is why mindset is so powerful, because when you start to understand how the thinking works. So as I said before, your thoughts create an emotion. It's a good feeling
Okay.
emotion, bad feeling emotion, to make it really simple. That emotion, first of all, if you're thinking that way and you're feeling, and you hold a thought for anywhere between 16 and 20 seconds, that's making you feel bad, the chances are another thought is going to come to you that is going to be associated with exactly the same frequency. It's going to be another
Interesting.
thought that's going to be like that. So you're
Hmm.
just going to feel a bit worse. And then another one comes and you feel a bit worse. And this is how people start to create anxiety. So that becomes a loop that's going on and on. And that emotion is going to have an effect on how you're going to take action or how you're going to
Right.
behave.
Right.
So if it's not
Yeah.
feeling good, the chances are, you're not really feel like doing. You're not going to get up off the couch to do something. You're not going to go to the gym. I'm just not feeling that. It's just I'm not. So it's gonna and ultimately that's gonna have a bearing on the result and the experience
Yeah.
you're having. But if you
And the
understand how to
cycle
shift that,
continues because of, yeah. Hmm.
yeah. So if you understand how to shift that, you are going to have you're going to have an effect on the result. Because if you're not getting a result that you want or an experience that you want, you got to look at it and you say, okay, so if that's starting from my thoughts, I got to go back to my thoughts. What's going on? What am I thinking? And again, some of those are going to be unconscious because connected to those thoughts or directly associated with that thinking are your beliefs. So it comes back to those programs that potentially you have learned over the years and how to actually start to shift those programs. So that's why
Interesting.
mindset is so important, because whether or not I mean, you can think, like you were saying, there are people saying, oh, but this is just mumbo jumbo, or it's woo woo, it's airy fairy. You can think that, but whether you like it or not, you are using your mindset, because you're
Yeah.
thinking. It's just now making
Right.
it a point to potentially, purposely think.
Makes sense. So, would you say that the common mindset problems that you see in entrepreneurs are the things that you touched on in terms of the belief that you've got to be stressed, you've got to have anxiety, you've got to sacrifice everything in order to be able to be successful. It's going to be a struggle. The fact that they sort of come with that baked into the equation, they don't have any other paradigm to work from where they could say, well, no, I can actually enjoy this, have fun with it,
Yeah.
and still be successful and,
It,
and achieve what I
it
want.
it's one of the biggest challenges, because it's amazing, like, to me, even when I speak to entrepreneurs and that, like, you start to see the looks on their face, like, no, no, I don't think it can be like that. Like, I can't. It can't be fun. It can't be. It can't be easy going. Now, I always make it very clear. It doesn't mean you're not going to have your challenges,
Of
but
course.
it's also understanding how you can actually have fun or be joyful through those challenges while you're going through those challenges. You don't have to suffer as an entrepreneur, and it is one of the biggest challenges. And on top of that, one of the other biggest challenges, again, associated with the action taking, because, not only do we get told that you need to be taking action, but a lot of times we get told you got to be taking massive action. And then on top of
Yeah.
that, you need to be taking massive action all the time. Because if you're not, someone else is, and you're going to lose out.
Right.
And you're going to lose out, which is so it is that thinking process. It comes from a lack mentality, that there's not enough. But when you start
Yeah.
to understand, and you come from an abundant mentality, an abundant mindset, you start to realize that there actually is enough for everyone. So no one's going to take anything from you. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't mean you're not going to be taking action. Yet the cool thing is this, and this is where, again, entrepreneurs have been fooled. What they don't realize, and again, one of the biggest challenges with entrepreneurs that I find, is actually telling them, you have to slow down. And they go, slow down
Yeah.
again, slow down.
Yeah.
What do you mean slow down? Like I said, I might miss out, and I need to be taking, and I get it. I get it. But just a second here. Because in between all of those things I said, if I were to use a diagram, and I was saying, with the thoughts and the emotions and the actions and the behaviors and the results and the experiences, right in between all of those is a gap. And in that gap is where everything you desire already is. Yet for you to enter into that gap, you need to be able to slow down. Slow down your thinking, slow down your brain waves. And this is where I like to call it quiet time. You can call it meditation, which is they're the same, one and the same thing. It's just a lot of people, as soon as you say meditation, they go to this airy fairy woo woo, and they think they need to be in a cave somewhere 1,000 miles away. It's not that, and as I start to explain that, but it's understanding how when you actually quiet yourself and slow down those and enter into that gap, that is where you can actually begin to create your future the way you want it.
Interesting.
And just I'll just finish that, and I'll let you intervene as
Sure.
well, because
Yeah.
intertwined with all of that as well, which is really important, and you sort of like touched upon it, with all the tasks and all that thing, is this is where entrepreneurs get lost as well, because they're designing their lives according to their businesses, rather than designing their businesses according to the way they want to live. So you
That
have
makes
to
sense. Yeah.
design your life the way you want it, according to how you want it, and then you allow your business to intertwine in your life. So you decide, I'll be working these many hours. This is what I'm going to be creating as an income, and so on and so forth. And this is the type. and looking at things holistically, and I want to have these types of relationships still in my life, because you can have everything. You can still have your life. I mean, what's the sense? Think about it. I mean, what's the sense of having this successful business and you've thrown your health down the drain? Your
Yeah.
relationships, whether intimate or with friends, or your social life, is totally distraught.
Right.
It sort of like
Right.
defeats the purpose.
Yeah. Well then what happens is you get to the mountaintop and you realize, oh, wait a minute. There's never enough. You'll never be able to make enough to fill that hole of the relationships and all the disaster in the wake. So it's fascinating to me because I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I talk to some very, very successful ones, and they've achieved amazing things that you would think, staring at that from the outside, they would be happy is not the right word, but they would have felt more joyous about the whole process. And I have to say, one thing that does amaze me that so many of them have in common is when I ask about their experience of getting there, right? It's all talk about struggle, worry, fear, anxiety, all of that. I mean, they're proud of what they've done, but you can still feel just below the surface that same level of concern and anxiety. And it amazes me because you would think that's something that would go away once you've reached a certain level of achievement based on whatever goals you have. And yet it doesn't seem to matter what level of success. I mean, I think people have that sort of wired that way sometimes. So you believe that business can be fun and easy and also profitable and rewarding, as opposed to just needing to be a continuous struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually imperative, because what's going to happen if it's not that way is precisely what you were just talking about. You see, there is no mountain peak, because you think you got there, but then there's more. And not only
You can
that,
see another mountain from there.
yeah, well, and not only that, what's happening to these entrepreneurs that you're mentioning, and it is very common, is
Yeah.
again, is they're doing the external work. It's the external gratification that they're looking at only. And external gratification will never give you lasting gratification. It will be extremely temporary. Because
Hmm.
and the challenge is for these people is that they're thinking that when they get there, the happiness is going to. Yeah, I mean, you were bang on saying, not using it is about, like, it. They think that they're going to arrive at happiness.
Yeah.
The thing is that when you are looking externally for that joy, for that, it's very short lived, because then you go, okay, so now what? I mean, this happened to, and again, this is why it's so important to be mentally prepared and to do the inside work, because your natural state, and this is what it's all about. For me, it's all about, more than ever now, where I'm guiding entrepreneurs is to move towards what I like to call true freedom. Because
Okay.
most entrepreneurs started their business because they wanted freedom, whether it was financial
Yeah.
freedom, time freedom. Yet I call it true freedom because it starts here. Because when you have the freedom here, you'll be free forever, because no one can really touch that. It's not external, it's
Right.
internal, and there are different components that line up with true freedom. And it's all about, and again, I'll tie this in as well, and you probably didn't find this maybe when you're doing some bit of research, because for me it's about bringing soul back into business.
Okay.
It's bring so under You got to understand yourself first. You got to find yourself first, so you can then, then you can have an impact on other people as well. And that joy inside is eternal, and everyone has it. It's everyone's natural state. So it doesn't matter what you're going through, you can still have that joy. And that's why, as much as a cliche, as of a cliche this is, like, it's the cliche of all cliches, is enjoy the journey. Like, how many times have we heard
Yeah.
that when I say it, I have to say it's a cliche, because some people, I know some people listening right now, yeah, Ken, what a load of, like, okay, yeah, I know, I get it. it's all about the journey. Enjoy the journey. But you know what? I got this going on. I got this going. I know it's a cliche, yet it is a truth, because
Yeah.
you can never have a joyful outcome with an unjoyful journey.
Yeah. That
Impossible.
makes sense.
And what is the
Yeah.
sense? What is the sense of your journey? And this is where the void comes in, where these entrepreneurs that you're
Hmm.
saying reach the mountain, and where the void comes in. What is the sense of me spending, let's say, 10 years to reach this financial success or this business success, and in those 10 years I've been miserable? Not only have I
Yeah.
been miserable, I have made the people around me miserable. I have,
Hmm.
I have, my health has deteriorated. My friendships, my relationships, they're on the edge or non-existent. My
Right.
spirituality, non-existent. I mean, and this potentially, and I'm not saying this is everybody, it's not. Yet, these are really, really key components, so that this, arriving at the top of the mountain and feeling like crap doesn't happen. You got
Yeah.
to do the inside
Yeah.
work.
Makes sense. So you're the founder of Mindset Malta. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, that happened because, like I said, so when COVID hit, like I said, my predominant business was I had a promotional merchandise business, and I was doing some I was still doing some coaching here and there, and then, believe it or not, at the end of 2019, so at end of 2019, I decided to just do some live videos. I founded Mindset Malta. I mean, it it's just let's say a name I like. My roots, like, I live in Malta. I'm based in Malta. My parents are Malta. I speak with this accent because I'm originally from Canada. Yet
Oh, no
my
kidding.
parents are both Maltese, so I've been in Malta now for 45 years. So, and I thought it was a bit of a catchy name. I thought it was pretty cool, and I founded Mindset Malta, and I just started doing some live videos, giving some very generic tips when it came to personal development
Hmm.
mindset. And that was the end of 2019, and then COVID hit 2020, and I was like, okay, that was sort of like divine intervention, if you'd like to call it, that I found it.
Yeah.
Right, and I just continued on that, and again, the idea behind Mindset Malta is I've created a number of different programs focusing on working with entrepreneurs. So I have some shorter online programs, I have some longer online programs. I've started to do live talks again, locally as well, and I do some one-to-one work as well. And the idea behind it, like I said, is now more than ever to guide entrepreneurs to move towards, like I said, true freedom, while bringing soul back into business, helping them to sustain consistency, to master focus and understand where they need to be focusing. So it is about understanding your focus, and this is where we've been fooled as well. Is that we've been fooled that to look at, or predominantly focus on, the physical world.
Okay.
So to look at the tasks, look at all the things we need to be doing, look at all the social media we need to be doing, and look at all these meetings that we need to be, whatever it is, all the physical, whatever is in the physical world. The thing is, if you
Yep.
start to shift your focus and you start to identify and look at the metaphysical world, and the non-physical, and this is where the meditation comes in, and tapping into that energy. If you actually start to spend more time doing that, you are going to have a tremendous impact on the physical aspect of your life, because when you do the inner work, and and your outer world, to make it really simple, your outer
Hmm.
world is a reflection of your inner world, and your inner world is what's going on with your thinking process, your belief systems, what you are tapping into, that energy that you're tapping into. So this is how you can actually have an effect on what's going on in the outer world. But most people are fooled to believe that they have to react to the outer world and what's going on in it, not realizing that what they're seeing in the outer world is not
Hmm.
necessarily what I'm seeing.
Right.
This is why two people
Right.
can look at things differently and can see a
Yeah.
whole different Two people will look at an accident or an incident and see it completely differently and describe it completely differently because
Yeah.
their inner worlds are
No,
different. Their belief systems are different.
that makes sense. So, what exactly is the proprietary ARC method, and
Okay,
how does that work?
cool. So the ARC method, a lot of people think that ARC is an acronym. It is not an acronym. I chose ARC.
Okay.
I chose ARC for the simple reason that um, an arc or an arch in the architectural world is one of the strongest structures. It's a very, very strong foundation, an arch or an
Hmm.
arc. And the arc method, which is intertwined, by the way, I called it a method, yet it is intertwined in any type of program that I do, any type of talk I do. It's always intertwined there because the arc method is a very strong foundation when it comes to mindset. And it's made up of 5 pillars, 5 core pillars. Those core pillars being awareness is number one. So awareness is all about, and it's actually sort of like develop. No, it's actually continued to develop. The method has continued to develop uh, since I've created it. And in fact, when it comes
Okay.
to awareness, I used to talk about awareness and how awareness is all about learning, and it
Hmm.
is. It is absolutely. But one other key component that's absolutely vital when it comes to awareness is actually unlearning.
Okay.
Because just because you have been taught something all your life does not necessarily mean that it's the truth. Like I said, a lot of people have been fooled. So, awareness is all about learning and unlearning. And everything begins with awareness because what you don't know, you don't know.
Right.
And what you do know, you've been taught. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth. So, that's the first pillar. The second pillar is adapting, which is all
Okay.
about change. And it's all about
Hmm.
embracing change. Again, we've heard this many a time how change is pretty well the only constant. Things will change at some point in time. You could have a thriving business, something
Yeah.
changes, and you either are going to embrace that change and say, okay, what can I do to move forward? Or potentially you are going to resist that change. Now, I'm not saying you just change things haphazardly, yet when you resist change, it's going to make it a lot more challenging for you to actually make that movement forward. When you can actually embrace change and say, okay, this potentially could be a good thing, it can have a significant difference when it comes to your business and your life. Because, and something you mentioned earlier on as well, and I think this is really important as well for entrepreneurs to understand, is whether you like it or not. And entrepreneurs tend to want to separate their business from their personal life. It's intertwined.
Yeah, it is.
You are going to take your core values into your business. You are going to take
Hmm.
your belief systems into your business, and they're going to go into your personal life as well. Now, what I do find with some entrepreneurs is that sometimes they're willing to compromise their core values when it comes to their business, which just means that they're probably compromising their core values when it comes to their personal life as well. Those are interesting, and
Hmm.
just a bit of a side. So the second pillar is adapting. The third pillar is alignment. And again, nothing we
Okay.
haven't talked about already. Alignment's all about inspiration and how to do that and how to align with inspiration. And that is the slowing down. That is the meditation. That is the quiet time. Something that's really interesting that I think aligned with this quiet time is it's a concept that I came up with, which I call 1 times 365 equals 42.
Okay.
And what does that mean? So if you actually took, because people talk about balance nowadays and they want balance in their life, and somehow entrepreneurs seem to think that they can take 1 week off in the year and that's going to balance out the rest of the year, right? They can work 80 hours a week for 50 hours, 50 weeks a year, and then they think they're going to take 1 week off and and it's going to balance everything out. It doesn't. Not only that, most of them are thinking about their business while they're taking their time off anyways, because they
Oh
haven't
yeah.
learned how to
Hmm.
slow down and switch off. So this 1 times 365 equals 42 is simply this. If you took 1 hour a day for yourself, every day for a year, that's the equivalent of 365 hours in a year. Now,
Sure.
how is that 1 hour taken off? Maybe there's some quiet time in there for you. Maybe, again, there could be some workout time, whatever it is. But it's time for you, no distractions. It's yours.
Right.
It's your time. There's no kids, there's no spouses, there's no partners, there's no internet. It's just you're like quiet. Be on your own.
Sure.
365 hours, 1 hour a day. That is the equivalent of 42 8-hour days. Now, if I approached any entrepreneur and said, listen, I want you to take 42 days off, they'd say, wait, Ken, you got to be kidding. Like, you're joking, right? My business would be distraught. Like, I would be done if I took 42 days off. But if you took 1 hour a day for a year, you'd essentially be doing that. And I can promise you,
Right.
it will be way more balanced because you will rejuvenate yourself. You'll feel revitalized. It'll just make a significant difference. And this is where you can learn to align, because this is the part, with the action part. And I'll talk about this when we go to the next pillar, because from alignment, the fourth pillar is applying. And applying
Okay.
is about taking action, but it's about taking inspired action. So once you've done the alignment and you've slowed yourself down enough to receive inspiration, to receive ideas, to receive solutions, rather than chasing, because it doesn't work that way. And I like to give the
Right.
example of the, slowing down and receiving ideas. I mean, how many entrepreneurs have I spoken to who have said that great ideas came to them, or solutions, when they, were at the end of a really difficult day, and they got in the
Always.
shower,
Yeah.
taking a shower,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden it was like,
Yeah.
that's the solution. That's the idea. Because
I woke up in the middle of the night with an idea and said, I got to write this down
Yeah.
for it, because I'll wake up in the morning and I'll have forgotten it.
because
Yeah.
that's where you just actually allowed yourself to slow down enough. Now, how cool is that when you actually purposely begin to do that, rather than it just
Yeah.
haphazardly happening? So applying the taking action part is about taking inspired action. And what's that going to do for you? It's going to save you a ton of time. And as an entrepreneur, you probably might want a little more time for yourself. So
Wouldn't hurt.
that's the fourth pillar, right? And then the fifth pillar, and
Yeah.
this is really, really, it's been a big part of my learning in my life as well, is all about allowing. And allowing is about trust. And what are we trusting? We're trusting ourselves. We're trusting in something that, call it whatever you'd like to call it. Call it the divine, call it God, call it source, call it the field, call it the quantum field. I like to call it the umami self. And why do I call it the umami self? In essence, the umami self is who you truly are. So that thing we're aligning with, that's who we truly are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, umami in the food world is when we eat
Yeah.
something so delicious, it's indescribable. In fact, the definition of umami is the essence of deliciousness. The umami
Okay.
self is the essence of deliciousness of who you truly are, who you really are. And when we learn to trust that and to tap into that more and more, and to trust that everything is always working out for you anyways, even when it appears not to be. Because there's some people going, and I get it. Ken, I'm going through right now I'm going through this crap, and I'm going through this, and this is not working out for me. And I get it, and I go, well, it appears not to be working out for you right now, simply because you don't have the full picture. Yet if you trust in your umami self and start to shift that belief system where you go, wait a second, if everything is always working out for me, I really don't have to worry too much about this. I just have to
Yeah.
trust myself. Let me start looking back at my thoughts here. What are my belief system? What's been going on recently? Have I been a bit worried about something, and this is why this is creating this result that I don't really want? And you start to learn how to do that. So that allowing, that trust is key. So in a nutshell, that is the ARC method. In a nutshell, that's the mark. And
That's
that
cool.
intertwines every single type of training I do, any tips, any, and we'll continue to intertwine any type of programs that I have in place and future programs that I'll be putting into place as well.
That's very cool. I appreciate you sharing it in such detail with us too. I think it, it really sort of illuminates how it all works and fits together. So, where can we find you, and where can we find your programs?
Where can you find me, and where can you find my programs? Well, the simplest way, a couple of things. Again, Instagram, you can find me Mindset Malta, without a doubt. You can
Okay.
start following me there. Same thing on Facebook. You can do the same thing, Mindset Malta. Um, Something that I have for your listeners as well, if they want, is a free gift. And that is simply
Awesome.
if they go to growth for the number four entrepreneurs.com, they'll go there.
Okay.
They're going to find some more information about myself and about some other stuff that I've done. But also there, they can actually sign up right there for a free program, which is called the Mindset Choice, the choice that changes everything. It's a short online program that I put
Okay.
together simply because there are so many entrepreneurs out there, as you said in the beginning, that are still like, oh, this mindset thing. They know about it, but they're not quite sure. In this program, I show them why mindset is so, even more so as to why mindset is so important. They have 3 core days in this program. When I say a day, it's a half an hour video, 3 half-an-hour videos, plus 4
Okay.
bonus days of 15 minutes each. And the
Okay.
cool thing with this program, the way I've done it, is that they can actually interact with me as well. Potentially in real time, the way I have it set up, but depending on time differences. But they will definitely interact with me if they take the action to actually engage. They have that opportunity. So if they go there, and then I will continue to interact with them. So I think that is actually the easiest way. And the last thing, they can send me an email if they'd like to, and they can send it to ken@mindsetmalta.com.
Awesome. So, the last question that I always have to ask is, what's your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
Brilliant. My number one tip is this, and I actually like to end a lot of videos this way as well. I tell people, listen, I say, remember to laugh a lot more, especially when you can laugh at yourself. And
I think it's great advice. Yeah.
I
Sense of
sincerely,
humor is really important.
I
And I
essentially
think
believe
so
in it.
few people have it
Yeah,
nowadays.
like
Yeah.
we forget. Like I have to remind myself sometimes as well. I go, geez, I really haven't laughed enough this week. Like, I mean, I really gotta, it's gotta be more. And we're gonna make mistakes, and we learn from that. But you just laugh at yourself. Some people are, you know, I can guarantee you some of the stuff you're going through right now, you might say, I can, but I can't laugh at this. The thing is this, a couple of years down the road, you're going to look back and you're probably going to laugh. So why wait? You might as well do it now because you're going to laugh
That's
anyway.
great advice.
So you might as well do it now. And if you start to
That's great
intertwine that
advice.
laughter more and more, I guarantee you, your outside world will begin to shift already. And a lot of gratitude.
Awesome.
If I could add
Yeah.
that as well, a lot of gratitude every single day. Be grateful for what you have. Be great, and then on top of that, learn how to be grateful and appreciate what's coming. Because that's how you begin to. That's how you begin to actually create your future right now.
That's exciting. Okay, so with that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again, Ken, so much for sharing all your insights and
Absolute
great tips
pleasure.
with us. Go to growth4, the number 4, entrepreneurs.com to get your free mindset awareness program and learn about how Ken can help you. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, remember, no matter what you want from your business and your life, don't compromise. optYOUmize.